Well, welcome to the 700 Club. You know, did we vote in socialism in the last election? I don't think so. And the American people say we've had it with what's going on in our country right now. They don't like inflation. They don't like what's happening at the borders. They don't like the foreign policy. And they don't like these enormous things that are happening. Well, the truth is, huge change could be coming in 2022. Republicans are raking in record-breaking money in their bid to win control of the U.S. House. They've raised $80 million so far. So can Democrats keep their slim majorities in both the House and Senate? Or does the GOP have the momentum on their side? Our Capitol Hill correspondent, Abigail Robertson, brings us that full picture.
In 2022, Republicans are specifically targeting 57 vulnerable Democrat House and Senate seats. While former President Donald Trump won't be on the ballot, he's making it clear he will very much be a part of these races.
Now, for the next 16 months, we must pour every ounce of our energy into winning a historic victory in the midterms.
This past weekend, Trump took credit for expanding the GOP's base and believes his supporters will help Republicans win big.
We will lead the conservative movement and the Republican Party back to victory, and it will be a greater victory than this party has ever had.
RNC spokesperson Paris Denard tells CBN News Trump will definitely play a role.
When it comes to electing Republican candidates, his support is important.
Denard also believes the key for Republicans will be recruiting diverse candidates.
Look at the last election. We had won over a dozen seats that we flipped from Democrat to Republican. Those seats were won by either a Republican woman, a Republican veteran, or a Republican minority.
And when asked if the RNC will support outspoken Trump critics like Representatives Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger,
if they're out of touch or out of step with where the Republican constituents are, they'll be voted out of office.
Denard argues the GOP needs to remain united on the broader goal.
We have to be focused on making sure that the Democrats are held accountable. Republicans need not to have this party infighting and this palace intrigue that the media just feeds off of. It does us no good.
Republicans need to gain just a single seat in the Senate and 5 seats in the House to win the majority, with the main battleground states being Georgia, Arizona, Pennsylvania, New Hampshire, and Nevada.
We're talking about such narrow majorities.
Inside Elections, Nathan Gonzalez told CBN News' Faith Nation it's too early to tell which party has the advantage.
I'm not sure we're ever going to have a clear idea about who has a firm control because the majority is so narrow. And in the House, we're in a holding pattern because we are in a redistricting cycle, and the states have not yet finalized their new congressional maps. So we don't know what the districts look like.
Unless Democrats hold the House and substantially expand their Senate majority, it's unclear if President Biden will be able to accomplish much more of his agenda without working with Republicans. Reporting from Capitol Hill, Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
Just think of it, ladies and gentlemen, 57 House seats in play, 57 of them. And people are really fed up. In my opinion, they're fed up. And the Democrats don't have a message, because what they have is a message of we're going to defund the police. So you've got crime skyrocketing, escalating all over the country. And so you're going to be running on a defund the police platform. Who wants that? And you're going to be running on an inflationary platform where everybody's paying more money for gas and electricity and all the other stuff. You're going to run on a platform where you're opening the border to as many as 1 million new aliens coming in every year. They're going to lose. And what the Republicans, the Democrats actually are trying to do is to jam this agenda through as fast as they can, because they know that the Speaker of the House is going to flip to the Republicans. And if the Senate flips again, you've got a number of seats in play. So right now it's a 50-50 deal, but it's going to be different. So hold on to your hats. But if I'm going to make a prediction, the prediction is it's going to be a landslide victory. A landslide victory for Republicans in this coming election. But it's a year away, so a lot of things can happen. Well, in other news, trillions of dollars, that's trillions in spending on new and expanded entitlements. That's what the Democrats want. And no surprise, they're calling it social infrastructure. So what about the nation's desperate need to upgrade our roads, bridges, and power plants? John Jessup has more on that.
Thanks, Pat. Democrats on Capitol Hill are pushing two companion pieces of legislation. Though they come in different packages, taken together, they cover much of President Biden's original $6 trillion budget proposal. CBN White House correspondent Eric Phillips has more on the price tag and the long-term impact of these new entitlements.
The entitlements are found in the budget bill Democrats just settled on Tuesday. Bear in mind that unlike with the bipartisan infrastructure bill, Democrats can use reconciliation to push the social piece through the Senate without the help of Republicans, as long as the party remains united on the cost.
We're going to get this done.
President Biden on Capitol Hill Wednesday to rally support for the $3.5 trillion budget reconciliation plan. It includes things like free universal pre-K, 2 free years of community college, home care for the elderly, and climate change. All items Democrats did not get in the $1.2 trillion bipartisan physical infrastructure bill that focuses mostly on needs like bridges and highways. Virginia Senator Mark Warner has worked on both bills.
This is the moment when we need to make the kind of investment in childcare, in preschool, in dealing with the challenges around the climate.
Warner says financing for the so-called social infrastructure piece would come mainly through increased taxes on the rich. Economic experts differ on whether that would work.
If the Biden administration were able to essentially push along some tax increases that would pay for it, then at least you can say, you know, that is not adding primarily to debt and deficits.
When you strip away all of the gimmicks that are in his budget, you find that the plan is underfunded over the next 10 years by about $1 trillion.
Warner says there are other funding sources.
Every Treasury Secretary, Democrat or Republican, says if we simply enforce our existing tax laws, it's the so-called tax gap where people aren't paying their taxes that are due. If we do that in a fair way, there's literally, the current IRS commissioner appointed by President Trump said there's $1 trillion. Now, I'm not sure there's $1 trillion, but there's a lot of money there.
An investment that some say could actually save the country money in the long run.
When we're talking about infrastructure, there is a cost to making those improvements and repairs, but there's also a huge cost to failing to do it. And then one could perhaps rightly ask the question, can the same things be said of the social aspects of this agenda?
Kogan sees a problem in that entitlements may not be going to those who really need them most.
We estimate that about 40% of all of the entitlement benefits under the Biden family's plan will end up going to individuals that are in the upper half of the income distribution.
Lawmakers are working feverishly on both bills at the same time, realizing that while separate, they are inextricably bound. Both could hit the Senate floor for debate within the next several days. Eric Phillips, CBN News.
Thanks, Eric. A key Democrat is already voicing serious concerns over the environmental initiatives in the $3.5 trillion plan. Pat, Senator Joe Manchin of Coal-Rich, West Virginia, says he's, quote, very, very disturbed by programs aimed at phasing out fossil fuels.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to tell you right now, who's going to pay for it? Who's going to pay for it? Your children, your grandchildren. These guys in Washington are loading up our children with an insupportable burden. And the time is going to come when we are no longer going to have the reserve currency of the world. When we lose that status, it's going to be a nightmare for every one of us. And you cannot live beyond your means but so long. We do need better roads and highways. There's no doubt about it. They're crumbling. Bridges are crumbling. It's costing us. So that is intelligent use of money. Beyond that, all these social programs we cannot pay for and we cannot afford. And the worst thing you would want to do right now is to add taxes to the already burdened middle class of small businesses that are just struggling to come out of the pandemic. So now they want to hit them with a big tax bill. It won't work. And ladies and gentlemen, again, it's going to be your children, your grandchildren that'll pay the bill. And if we destroy this country, and that's what we're on the way to do, if we destroy our reserve currency, then it's going to be a nightmare, believe me. John?
Pat, U.S. intelligence uncovered a plot by the Iranian regime to kidnap an American citizen for criticizing Iran's strict religious laws for women. Mahsa Ahmadinejad, an Iranian-born writer and activist living in New York, worked with the FBI after learning of the alleged plot to abduct her from her home in Brooklyn. In an interview with the Associated Press, she vowed to keep speaking out.
I give voice to the mothers whose children got killed, got shot in the head, got shot in the chest, got tortured to death in prison. I give voice to those women inside Iran who say no to compulsory hijab, who say that we want to be our true self. If you arrest me, you're going to keep them silent? No.
Prosecutors charged an Iranian intelligence officer and several others, according to an unsealed indictment. The Biden administration says it won't let the incident interfere with its efforts to restart nuclear talks with Iran. Well, unsurprisingly, Israelis are concerned about America's efforts to resume that agreement with Iran. Recently in Jerusalem, some high-profile nuclear experts warned about the dangers of trusting Tehran. And as Chris Mitchell reports, some believe the Islamic regime might already have a nuclear weapon.
These experts are part of the World Nuclear Forum, scientists who believe Iran is masquerading its nuclear program as a peaceful effort while maintaining a long-range plan to develop weapons.
It's not just a country that wants to become a nuclear power. It's an extreme religious country with the ideology of the Islamic Revolution to establish a hegemony over the region and even global hegemony, and with the intention to annihilate Israel.
They point out the original 2015 agreement focused on enriching uranium, but failed to address Iran's long-range ballistic missiles or warhead research, while flooding Iran with billions of dollars.
Immediately after that money was released, you start seeing proliferation of terror organizations. It's Hezbollah, it's Hamas, it's the Quds in Yemen. So you start seeing that immediately. It's clearly a cause and effect thing.
These experts, including a Nobel Prize nominee, believe Iran may already have a nuclear weapon.
How close do you think Iran is getting to a nuclear weapon?
Very close. If not, they have it already. So all of the world, all the superpowers, all looking about the uranium. But uranium is only one slice of the pizza.
I can find it hard to believe that a country that's such high-tech developed as Iran, working on it so many years, doesn't have at least one nuclear weapon, especially since they're connected to North Korea.
While some may dismiss a nuclear Iran, these scientists agree that just one nuclear weapon used as an EMP, an electronic magnetic pulse, could destroy a country's power grid and way of life.
Electricity, water, food, supermarket, hospitals. If you have a problem with an EMP, you have a real life problem, even in a great and big country like the United States.
This expert and intelligence officer helped with the 1981 Israeli strike that destroyed Saddam Hussein's atomic reactor. The experts say any agreement needs teeth.
You must have a ready-to-go, well-cooked military option. That's a must for the agreement.
In the meantime, Prime Minister Naftali Bennett has launched a review of Israel's Iran policy. The review will address if Israel is better or worse off if the U.S. re-enters the deal, how Israel can influence the Biden administration, and an Israeli military option. The review comes before Bennett's meeting with President Biden, scheduled for later this month. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Thanks, Chris. Pat, a nuclear-armed Iran is a dangerous prospect not only for the region, but for the world.
John, what we've got to realize, and ladies and gentlemen, you've got to realize, they believe in what is called the 12th Imam, the so-called Mahdi. They believe in it firmly. And what is the Mahdi? The Mahdi is going to be the one who will come at the end of the age. And he will be the Islamic Messiah. He will come to bring peace on earth. And according to their belief, before he comes, there will be chaos and terror throughout the world. And the Mahdi will come and settle everything peaceably. But until he comes, there's going to be chaos. And so the idea of eliminating Israel with a nuclear strike is in keeping with their beliefs. That's what they believe. They believe the world will be in chaos before the Mahdi appears. Now, that's what they say, and he's supposed to be hiding in some well in Qum. So they built a highway from Qum down to the capital city so that he'd have plenty of space to travel when he comes out. But I mean, it's crazy what they believe, but at the same time, they would not hesitate to use a nuclear weapon to incinerate Israel. And as was pointed out in that particular program, we've been warning about an EMP blast a long time ago, electronic magnetic pulse, because one nuclear device, just one, exploded at about, say, 15,000 feet in the air over Chicago, would fry the electric grid of the entire United States of America. The same thing could be done in terms of Israel. Israel could be put out of the game because without question, the North Koreans have nuclear weapons and they are sharing the technology with the Iranians. It's a scary world. My own personal belief is God Almighty will not allow the nations of the world to destroy themselves with nuclear weapons. But that doesn't mean we should stand idly by and let a bunch of crazies, and that's what it amounts to. It is insanity what they believe. But they believe it so firmly, they would not hesitate, and I mean this literally, they would not hesitate to obliterate Israel with a nuclear weapon.